Alright, what's going on, guys? So yesterday I was just scrolling the internet and I came across an article that I think you guys are going to find very interesting. I started reading this article and I just thought, man, this is exactly what I was trying to touch on in my Why I Love Dark Souls video. And I've seen a lot of takes from like news publishers talking about Dark Souls that are really out of touch with the game, but I think this is a very, very good one that really deserves some more recognition. And I'm going to break it down for you guys. We're going to go through it. And I'm going to give my opinion and my take on the article. The title of the article is Don't Go Hollow, How Dark Souls is Defeating Depression. Now obviously the point of this video is not to make light of depression, so this is just going to be coming from a different perspective that I think you're going to find interesting. So let's get into the article. It says, for many it feels like nothing, as if some unseen force has stripped away the sufferer's ability to feel. There is no joy or sadness or pain or pleasure, just nothing. It feels as if you're going hollow. Dark Souls fans know what that's like. The Japanese game, developed by From Software and released by Bandai Namco in 2011, is a brutal exercise in trial and error. Players control the chosen undead, a hero fated to die over and over again, as they make their way through a dying kingdom called Yoren, killing Lovecraftian monsters lurking in the dark. One wrong move can mean a swift death, and when you die in Dark Souls, all the monsters you defeated return. Even worse, the chosen undead drops all their unspent experience points and loses a little of their humanity. In Dark Souls, this degenerative state is called being hollow. Strange then that a growing community of gamers credit Dark Souls with helping them cope with depression. A few even say the brutal game saved their life. How can a 5-year-old game, famous for its depressing setting and brutal difficulty, help people with mental illness? Hamish Black, a 25-year-old from Scotland, was on tour with a band when his depression got the better of him. He says, I tried to kill myself twice in 1 week. It wasn't a good time for me at all. Black had dealt with the symptoms of depression since adolescence, but it wasn't until his early 20s that the illness became unbearable. After his suicide attempts, he went home to get better. He says, I was understandably under close supervision and I was just trying to recover. I had a lot of time to focus on just trying to relax and decompress. That involved playing video games, and weirdly, that involved playing what is largely considered one of the most stressful video games ever created. Black played Dark Souls before, but put it down after reaching one of the only safe areas in Yoren. I always found myself getting to Firelink Shrine and then going towards the catacombs, just to die, but this time was different. The situation I was in made it resonate with me, he said. The first time I played Dark Souls, it came across as this game that wallowed in death and just swallows the life out of everyone. Black's suicide attempt changed the way he saw the game. There's a recalibration that goes on in your head regarding life and death. That was my last suicide attempt because something triggered in my head that said, I want to fight this, I want to survive. Dark Souls is all about survival and perseverance. The game's marketing goes out of its way to let players know how hard it is. A later re-release of the game is called Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition, which you will a lot. But every death is a lesson. Bosses that once seemed impossible become trivial after the chosen undead has died enough times to learn all their attack patterns. Dark Souls isn't as grim and macabre as the marketing made it out to be, Black explained. In fact, he came to think of the game as a celebration of life. The amount of times I died in the game became comical. It trivialized death. Death was no longer the thing that mattered, it's about living and persevering, even if it's in this world that feels completely indifferent to your presence. Black felt he'd found a game that understood what he was going through. He was like the chosen undead, surviving and thriving in a world indifferent to his presence. Having a game reflect that idea to me was one of the biggest reasons I feel I've avoided a relapse, he said. I'm going to skip a little bit through here because there's a quote that stuck out to me a lot, and here's that quote. He says, I can reflect on what I've been through in the game, and I can tell myself, hey, you beat Smo and Ornstein, the hardest boss in the game. If you can do that, you can get out of bed today and try to be a decent human being. The article goes on to explain a lot of psychological applications of video games, but I'm not going to get into that here. I'm going to go ahead and give my take on this article. So if you watch my How I Fell in Love with Dark Souls video, then you know what I'm about to talk about. But in my life, when I found Dark Souls, it was honestly one of the darkest points in my life that I'd been in. I wouldn't say I really dealt with any serious depression, but it was a really hopeless state that I was in. It was a time in my life when I was getting bullied a lot, I was struggling with a lot of self-image issues, and when I found Dark Souls, it was a very similar experience to what he went through. Obviously not the suicide part, but getting that sense of like, if I can do this, and if I can beat this game, I can get up and I can pursue the day, and face the hardships in front of me. But I want to talk about something a little deeper. I know for me, and I think it's a similar case with a lot of guys who end up playing this game. We go through life feeling like we have no purpose. There's a popular psychologist who kind of deals with the psychology of young men, and one thing he talks about is that when he goes and works with these young men, one thing they're just crying out for is a sense of purpose and a challenge to face in their lives. And that's a common reason why young men are so attracted to fantasy games like this and adventure games. It's because, especially in the modern age, it's so hard to find an overarching purpose for your life like you can in a video game that's going to give it to you instantly. And we try to replicate that through these games. And when we play them, we get so immersed, and it really takes us out of the real world and gives us that experience where we don't have to deal with our day-to-day lives when we play these games. It's like all the problems just slip away while we're in this fantasy world. And Dark Souls is a very, very strong example of that. Another thing the psychologist talks about is there's a formula out there for fantasy games and fantasy books and things like that. It's called the hero's journey. And what he believes is that young men need to experience the same kind of journey in their own lives, at least to some extent. Now, obviously, the fantasy aspect is not going to be applicable in the real world. But you have things like a call to adventure, a journey through the abyss, the death and rebirth, the atonement and the return with a newfound strength. Now, he believes this kind of application into one's life is what's going to give them a sense of satisfaction and a sense of purpose to keep driving them day to day. And now if you look closely, you can see how playing Dark Souls kind of follows the same formula. When somebody gets you to play the game, that's your call to adventure. Whenever you get there and it's way too hard for you and you feel like you want to quit, that's the abyss. And when you finally beat those bosses and you beat the game, that's the redemption and the newfound strength. That tells you that you have the power to overcome these obstacles in your life. And while that's very hard to see at the surface, Dark Souls just looks like a really hard fantasy adventure RPG. But there's so much more to it, and there's so much more that it can offer the player and teach them about life, and that's why so many people credit it with saving their life when they're in a depressive state. And that's another reason why when you see all these people calling out for an easy mode for this game, it really doesn't need it, because what makes it so special and so therapeutic is the fact that it's so hard, and when you beat it, that's what gives you the sense of satisfaction, is the difficulty, and you finding the power to overcome the challenges. And that's another reason why I just love these games so much, is because there's so much more to it than just an action RPG fantasy game that's hard. And so many people think that that's all it has to offer, is the fact that it's hard, but it's so much more than that. But that's going to be all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like on it, and if you did find it kind of special, be sure to share the video if you don't mind. It's really going to help me grow the channel. And hit that subscribe button if you're not already. But until the next video, I'll see you guys later.
I let her test drive out in the west side. She get my best side. Girl, I know you see it coming on your timeline.